Do you want to know the number one reason why you are not seeing results from your fitness journey, despite the fact that you are working out consistently for months, probably even years, despite the fact that you are eating healthy, you're getting in your protein, and yet for all that effort, you just can't seem to get that fit, toned body that you dream of having? The number one reason why you are not seeing those results is because you are guessing and hoping for results instead of actually going based on a scientific strategy using data. You are not tracking data and you are not evaluating and then making decisions based on that data. You are just kind of throwing stuff against the wall and hoping that it will work. So in today's video, I'm going to explain how to guarantee that you see results, that you build that fit, sexy body of your dreams by actually using science and data. So you are no longer guessing and hoping. You know for a fact that you are executing the correct steps that will guarantee you see results. What's going on, Fit Fam? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan Janice, the founder of Nomadic Fitness, and I teach you ladies how to eat way more food without any restrictions and work out smarter instead of harder so you can build that banging, sexy, feminine hourglass body that you feel amazing in and can maintain year-round for life with ease. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Come follow me over on Instagram for even more fitness content. And if you're coming on back, thanks so much for joining for another video. Okay, fam, first things first, we need to discuss what a lean, fit, toned, sexy looking body actually is. And as I say in all my videos, it is nothing more than taking some body fat off and maintaining a relatively low body fat percentage. But most importantly, it is gaining quite a lot of muscle. And one of the biggest mistakes that women are always making, that is meaning that they're never getting the snatched, fit, sexy body that they want to have, is because they are only thinking about fat loss and they are not focusing enough on muscle gain. It is the muscle that is going to give you the smooth, firm, tight skin you want to have, the sexy shape and definition where you want it, aka essentially just a small waist, big poppin' booty, overall hourglass figure that looks amazing. Okay, so once we understand this, we need to lose body fat, gain muscle. That's literally it. That is how you're going to look amazing and be able to maintain it year-round for life with ease. We need to then know how can we guarantee that we see those results. And the big mistake that I see constantly is that women are working out, they're eating healthy, they're being mindful to get in their protein, but that is really their only strategy. Just, oh, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna eat healthy. That is not nearly enough to, for sure, see the best results that you wanna see. The way that you are going to get the transformation you really want as fast as possible and be able to maintain it is by actually tracking data and then evaluating and making decisions based on that data. So really, you need to think of getting fit as taking your body through a controlled science experiment, because that's really all it is. You're taking yourself right now, which is probably somebody who has more body fat than you want and not very much muscle, and you're trying to become someone who does not have that much body fat and has a lot of muscles, aka looking fit, toned, sexy, and shapely. Okay, so to get from A to B, you need to actually know how to get there instead of just guessing and hoping to get there. So what is the data that you must be tracking? The first is that you need to track your body's data. So the two big things to be tracking is weighing yourself every single day, first thing in the morning, before eating or drinking anything, after using the washroom, and ideally doing it naked. If for some reason you can't do it naked, always do it with the exact same amount of clothing so that it's not going to be altering the data. Now, you don't just want to weigh yourself and then write it down somewhere. You want to actually chart it in a graph. Why does this matter? Because the number in and of itself, your weight just as a number, literally doesn't mean anything, right? Because, for example, there's a lot of women who weigh the same as me. I'm 137 pounds right now, 5'6", and a lot of women don't look as fit as I do at those exact numbers. So that is why it's not about how much you weigh, it's the source of the weight, muscle versus fat, aka body composition, that matters. So then you're asking, okay, well, if it doesn't matter how much you weigh, why are we tracking our weight? Why does that matter? The reason why is because we want to see the overall trend happening with your weight, because it is giving us really important information about how your body is responding to what you're doing to try to get fit. And of course, what we're talking about there is your food and your workouts. So for example, we want to see, okay, is your scale weight more or less maintaining with what you're doing right now? Is it trending upwards with what you're doing right now, or is it trending downwards? Those are obviously the only three options, and none of those are either good or bad. It's all relative to what your goals are. So that is why you need to be tracking your weight, putting it in an actual graph so you can see the overall trend that is happening. Now, for example, I am into my 8th week of cutting, and here's what my weight trend looks like over the last 2 months. You can see that there is an overall downward trend happening. I'm about 4 pounds down in my cut in about 8 weeks. But you can see there were some days that I literally hit a new low, and then the next day I would literally weigh another 3 pounds. So it is super normal to have fluctuations. The scale is going to be going up and down like that because just day to day, especially as a woman, we have all kinds of stuff going on in our body. So this is why you should not weigh yourself just once a week. You need to do it every day because you need to have the overall trend and be mindful of the fact that there are going to be fluctuations and to not let that mean anything. Now, again, gaining, maintaining, or losing weight in and of itself is not bad. It's all relative to what you want to achieve. So for example, since I am in a cut right now, that means I am trying to maximize fat loss. So if the scale was not trending down overall, that would be a problem because the whole point is right now I am trying to lose body fat as much as I possibly can, and that means I need to be seeing the scale trending downwards. If the scale is not trending downwards, I am not in an actual deficit, and that means I need to change my protocols, aka my food and workouts, to create a deficit to see the progress that I want. Okay, so now you can kind of see what I mean, that you have to have actual data to go by to know whether or not what you're doing is working and whether or not you need to make any changes to what you're doing. So for example, I'm about 2 months into my cut, and this is only the second adjustment we have made with my food protocols, my macros, protein, fats, and carbs that I'm eating to achieve these results. I'm still at 2,050 calories, and it's only a week ago that we also added in some cardio to help push things along. But overall, it is working, and we know it's working because the scale is trending downwards. So that is why we don't need to be changing everything and, oh shoot, well maybe I should do a whole bunch extra cardio, maybe I should slash my calories more. No, we have the data, we know things are working, so we're just going to continue plodding along until we see from the data that we need to make an adjustment because I'm no longer hitting new scale lows. Okay, so in addition with tracking your weight, you also need to be taking weekly progress photos. And that is because, as I said, you could take a woman who's my exact age, height, and weight, and we could look completely different. And that is because what we actually care about is body composition, right? We care about looking lean, fit, and toned, which means adding muscle, keeping the body fat levels low. And if you're not taking weekly progress photos, you really have no way of knowing how your physique is changing. You might think, oh, you know, I see myself in the mirror, so I get a general idea. But trust me, a lot of the time, the changes are so gradual day to day that you might not even really notice them. So it is so in your best interest to take photos, and then you can compare them side by side over time. And some of the time you'll be really surprised by the changes you see. So daily weigh-ins, weekly progress photos. Okay, so that is an absolute must that you must be tracking that. Now let's talk about actually tracking what you're doing, what your protocols are, aka what you're doing with your food and your workouts to achieve the results you want. So this is another area where so many women are just completely not doing this correctly, right? Because they're like, well, I just eat healthy and I work out. But how do you know that the amount you're doing is actually producing the results you want? The only way to know for sure is to have consistent targets that you adhere to, and then to see how does my body respond when I am consistent with this exact amount of food, this exact amount of working out, and then seeing, is it getting me closer to where I want to be or is it not? Because if it's not, then you know you need to change it. So you need to have a consistent workout plan. Generally speaking, I think this should be 4 days a week, 2 lower bodies, 2 upper bodies, lifting weights, ideally in a gym, or if you're gonna do it at home, getting yourself access to challenging equipment, not just 5 or 10 pound dumbbells. That is not enough for you to really build some muscle. And remember that toned look is a muscular body. So be consistent. You don't wanna be saying, oh, well, 1 week I went to the gym 5 days a week and then the next week I went once. That is a way to not know whether what you're doing is working or not because the data is varying so much. So you have to have consistent targets that you're aiming for with your workouts. And then especially, you need to have consistency with your nutrition. Again, this is a huge pitfall I see all the time with women, is that they're just kind of eating healthy. Maybe they're sort of aiming for a protein target, or maybe they're sort of aiming for a calorie target, but they're not really being consistent and dialed in with this. So how do you do this correctly? You need to track all macros, not just protein, not just overall calories. You need to have a specific gram amount of protein, fats, and carbs that you're aiming for. So for example, my current macros is 140 grams of protein, 55 grams of fat, and 250 grams of carbs. This means that I'm aiming to be within 5 grams plus or minus of each of those targets every single day outside of my free meal days. Right now, since I'm cutting, I only have 1 day a week where I get to have a free meal, or also what most people would call a cheat meal. This means I'm hitting my macros within 5 grams 6 days of the week. When you're not cutting, you can have a little bit more flexibility. You can do this 5 days a week because you're not in that really dedicated fat loss phase right now, so you have a little bit more flexibility. So this is huge because you need to know, okay, I eat this exact amount, and then seeing what happens to my body when I eat this exact amount. When I'm consistent with this exact amount of workouts, how does my body respond? Am I overall losing or am I not? If you're not overall losing, you know you need to either make more of a deficit by decreasing food a little bit or increasing overall activity. Another area is probably that you could increase the intensity of your training. That's also where a lot of women are falling short, is they're just not really pushing themselves as hard as they could be in their strength training, weightlifting workouts. But again, you just know that if the data is not moving in the direction that you want, you know you have to troubleshoot something. Okay, so how can you for sure hit your macro protocols? The best way to do this is to pre-log your day of eating ahead of time. So what this means is you take 5 minutes first thing in the morning or the night before, you go into MyFitnessPal and you plan out everything that you are going to eat for the day, and you make sure that it is within just a couple of grams of each of your macro targets. Then all you need to do is simply follow the plan. You already know exactly what you're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, any snacks, and you simply eat that amount, and then boom, you're guaranteed to hit your macros. So this is what we help our clients with inside of our one-to-one coaching program, because a lot of the time women really struggle with this. They maybe have heard this concept of macros, but they struggle to be adherent, to actually be consistent, and find it really overwhelming. So we have so many hacks that just make this really quick and really easy, so that you're gonna melt body fat, you're gonna build that sexy muscle definition, and you're gonna get this dramatic transformation. So if you don't wanna have to figure this all out on your own, you want the accountability, the guidance, and support with a fully custom strategy, that's exactly what we provide for you to get an amazing jaw-dropping transformation. So if you're interested, you can click on the link in the description to apply to work with us. Okay, the other thing is to actually track your food with a digital kitchen scale. Do not track just using cups and tablespoons. The reason why is too easy for you to be overestimating or underestimating the actual amount of food you're having. That is why using a scale and actually just weighing it out and then tracking it that way is so much more precise. Now, I know a lot of people who've never done this, they think it's really overwhelming. They're like, oh my God, that's obsessive. That's gonna take forever. To be honest, I thought the same thing too when I first came across this topic, but honestly, it doesn't take really any time at all. You're already in the kitchen. You're already going to be measuring your food. This way is just doing it more accurately. So instead of using a cup, you're going to use a scale and actually weigh it out to the gram. And this is how you're going to know for sure that you're eating the right amount. Now, I know you might be hearing all of this and thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of work to plan your food, measure it, and then follow the plan. But remember, you want to have a really dramatic transformation with your physique. This is how you guarantee that you get those results. Once you do get to the fitness level that you want to have, once you're really happy with your physique, you don't have to be doing this all the time. You can be much more intuitive, much more flowy with your approach to food because you already have the great physique. But if you're not yet where you want to be, this is how you can really be sure that you will get there. So yes, it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of intention, but think of it this way. If you're going to be spending all your time working out and trying to eat healthy anyways, wouldn't you rather just be making sure that you're doing it correctly instead of wasting all this time and energy trying to get the results but not actually getting them because your strategy wasn't specific and dialed in? All right, so if you're not sure what your macros should be, I have a video that explains exactly how to calculate step by step what your custom number should be, so you can go check that out here, and I'll also link it in the description. Okay, so now you know what data to be tracking, and we know that the fitness results that you want is losing body fat and gaining muscle. So it's really important to also remember that for the most part, to gain muscle or to lose body fat, they require a separate strategy. To gain muscle as much as possible, you need to be in a slight calorie surplus, and to lose as much fat as possible, you need to be in a slight calorie deficit. So this is why you need to pick what you are focusing on and dedicate time to being in a specific phase before you move to the next one. Now, if you are new to this whole world of lifting weights, tracking macros consistently, in the beginning, you can be doing both simultaneously. You can have some amount of both fat loss and muscle gain happening for a little bit, but eventually you will plateau and you're going to need to pick to focus on one or the other. So this brings us to understanding that there are 3 different phases that you can be in at any specific time to overall achieve these physique goals. And they are reverse dieting, cutting, and building. So cutting is where you're in the calorie deficit to maximize fat loss. Building is where you're in the moderate calorie surplus to maximize muscle gain, and reversing or reverse dieting is essentially how you prepare yourself for either of these phases and or also how you transition between the phases. So a reverse diet is where you gradually increase the amount of food that you are eating consistently, and you do this obviously by tracking your macros, tracking your weights, and taking weekly progress photos so that you can evaluate that data and know that you are doing it correctly. And the reason you do this is, number 1, to get that initial body composition going, right? Like I said, in the beginning, you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time in a reverse diet. However, you can only do this within a couple of pounds before you're gonna kind of max it out. So you're gonna do this to improve body composition, but most of all, the main reason to really do a reverse diet is to optimize your metabolism. You're trying to get your body adapted to burning as many calories as you possibly can so that it's going to be much easier for you to maintain your results, and it's also going to be easier for you to lose body fat when the time comes. Now, the trajectory that most people are going to need to do is they're going to need to first do a reverse diet, then go into a cut. And the reason why is because most people have body fat that they need to lose. Then when they're done their cut, they would reverse diet out of the cut once again. And assuming that they're now lean enough, they would move into the build phase to build as much muscle as possible before eventually at a point probably starting to feel like they gained a little too much body fat. And then once again, going back to a cut to trim down the fluff, but have all that amazing sexy muscle to show underneath. So for example, this is my client Stephanie, who's lost 25 pounds working with me and is obviously just looking way more lean. And she's a perfect example of somebody who went through a reverse and then into a cut and is now in her post-cut reverse, maintaining the 25 pounds down that she lost doing her deficit. And here's kind of an opposite example with a client. This is my client Kaylin, and she's somebody who didn't go straight into a cut when she started with me, and that's because she was already quite skinny. I mean, technically she was sort of skinny fat. She was a little mushy, a little flabby, but her calories were super low and her body responded really well to the reverse we did. So she came in only eating about 1,400 calories a day and going to the gym 6 days a week. But then of course wondering why she wasn't looking more toned, more snatched. So what we did first was we started with a reverse, and eventually that turned into an actual build. And you'll know that it becomes an actual build when you start steadily gaining weight, because that's actually what you're trying to do in a build phase, is put on some weight because you are trying to gain as much muscle as possible. Now in her case, she actually ended up looking much better even though she was gaining weight. But by the end of her build, we gotten her all the way up to 2,800 calories a day. So we literally doubled the amount of food she was having. And yes, by the end of their build, she was a little bit fluffier, a little bit thicker than she probably wanted to be, but that's okay, because now what we did was we went into a calorie deficit from there into her cut, and we were able to trim down that fluff very easily, get her super toned, super lean and defined, and the lowest we had to go was 1,800 calories a day, meaning at her very lowest intake, she was still eating significantly more than when she started the program, but looking like a whole new woman. So fam, that is why it is so important to have actual data to go by. You need to know how is your body responding to what you're doing, and to also have consistent protocols that you're adhering to see results. So again, if you don't want to have to figure this all out on your own, if you just want to be told exactly what to do, guided through it, held accountable, supported and encouraged, that's exactly what we provide inside of our one-to-one coaching, giving you a scientifically guaranteed strategy that is going to melt that body fat, build that sexy muscle definition, and allow you to maintain it at a high calorie intake for life with ease. So if you're interested, click on the link in the description, fill out an application, and we would love to chat with you. All right, fam, thanks so much for checking out this video. Now next, I want you to go watch this one here, where I'm gonna break down more about macros, how to customize them for yourself, and how to be sure that you are actually hitting them to see the results you want. So I'll see you in that video.